And welcome everybody. My name is Bronwyn Strong. I'm the Program Director for the Natural History Society of Maryland. I'm so happy that you have joined us today for our Community Science Saturday, where we're going to learn all about the Winter Salt Watch program from the Izaak Walton League of America. And we're so pleased that Emily Bialowas has joined us and has agreed to share with us. She is the Chesapeake Bay Monitoring Outreach Coordinator for the Izaak Walton League of America. So we'll find out what that means. We'll learn all about salt and how to watch it. Emily, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to learn from you and learn how we can help you collect the data we need to help save the bay.
Of course. Let me share my screen. One moment. Can everyone see that? Okay, great. Okay. So like Bronwyn said, my name is Emily. I work at the Izaak Walton League. I am the Chesapeake Monitoring Outreach Coordinator. That is not entirely different, but that's a pretty separate project from what I do for Winter Salt Watch. But that is part of something called the Chesapeake Monitoring Cooperative. So we work with other volunteer water quality monitoring groups throughout the Chesapeake watershed to monitor water quality, and we have a database full of water quality data that we share with the Chesapeake Bay program. Winter Salt Watch is a little more accessible than that, and I'll explain how. So I just want to get back up and give some background of how our project started. So this picture is one that our Clean Water Fellow at the time, in about exactly 3 years ago, end of January 2018, he took this picture outside of our office in Gaithersburg. If you live in Gaithersburg, or if you ever drive a Muddy Branch Road, it's kind of a fast road. It's 4 lanes. And in the winter, it's possible to have some overzealous salters. And you see this pile of salt right in front of us that's actually on top of a storm drain. And there was so much salt there that we were actually like slipping and sliding, getting into our parking, into our driveway at our office. So it was sitting on the storm drain, and that storm drain runs right into the Muddy Branch, which is a creek that goes through the property at our office. And our Clean Water Fellow, Scott, got really riled up about this. He wanted to go clean it up himself, and we said, you can't do this. It's a very busy road. You'll get hurt. So he tried to call the city. They said that's the county's job. He tried to call the county. They said it was the city. And after a lot of back and forth, he ended up writing like two letters to the editor, to local papers. He's from Olney, so he wrote one for the Olney paper, and he wrote one to the Washington Post, and they were both published. And we were like, this is a big issue. And we have a water quality monitoring program called Save Our Streams, and monitoring chloride is a regular part of Save Our Streams. And if you've ordered a kit, you see that you get a chloride strip to test chloride. So we have a bottle of, we have bottles of those for our Save Our Streams monitoring program. So we tested the water at the outflow of where this storm drain is in Muddy Branch, and it was off the chart. It was really high, a dangerously toxically high level of chloride. And we got to thinking, if this is happening here in Maryland, in a place where it only winters every so often, this must be a problem everywhere where winter happens in the US. So we came up with this campaign. We thought people can monitor their water and or take pictures of salt piles, and we can raise some awareness, get people involved in the community, and also actually get a good idea in different communities across the country of what salt is doing to our water, and connecting volunteers to that. So, and I do just want to say we were able to get this cleaned up by talking to someone at MDE. So I think this is technically considered a spill. So that's how we were able to clean it up. But not from the city or county if you want to deal with that in your community, if everyone here is from Maryland. So our goal with Winter Salt Watch is first and foremost to raise awareness in the general public about that connection between the salt on the road and the health of the stream. Secondarily, we want to identify hotspots where there's high levels of chloride in fresh water. Some states do have chloride monitoring programs, or it's an emerging interest in some places, but they're not able to get to every location. So volunteer data is really great. And the strips we use are not, EPA approved or anything, but they can identify thresholds. So it can tell us where there are high levels of chloride concentration in the water. And then this year, we're making a stronger effort to make that connection, close the loop. You've gone out, you've monitored, you've found high levels of salt. What can you do now? We're trying to get people to advocate for smarter application of road salt by sharing results with people in their community, with private landowners and local and state agencies, and seeing what they can do about it. And I can talk about some of our advocacy resources in a little bit. So we're talking about road salt, but there are a few ways chloride can get in fresh water. There are a couple of natural ways. There's karst topography in your region. There can be salt there, and that can seep into groundwater and aquifers. But most of our sources of chloride in fresh water is from people. Sometimes sewage contamination. A huge one is road salt, obviously. So both application from the government, so state and local government, and also private application. I couldn't find the graph. I wanted to show it to you guys, but there's a map from, I think, Montgomery County, where they sourced where the salt in water was coming from, and about 40% was coming from, parking lots and private roads. So that's somewhere where I think as engaged community members, we can have an impact on that. And then also there are the sources of water softeners. If you live in an area where there's hard water, water softeners have salt in them, and also fertilizer. So that's, depending on where you are in Maryland, that might not be a major issue, but out in the Midwest, that can be a big source of salt. So this is from our friends at Wisconsin Saltwise, but I really like this because it puts it really straightforward that it only takes 1 teaspoon of salt to permanently pollute 5 gallons of fresh water. And 5 gallons might not be that much. 1 teaspoon, you might not think that's a ton, but on the scale that we apply salt, that can be a lot. So wildlife impacts. Salt in fresh water can affect fish. Think about it, we have saltwater fish and freshwater fish. We have some fish that go in between those places, but mostly they've evolved to their habitats. So they're not used to living in a saltier environment. We at our organization are really concerned about aquatic macroinvertebrates because they can tell us a lot about stream health. If you don't know what a macroinvertebrate is, those are the bugs. In the lower left corner here, you can see a mayfly. That's an aquatic macroinvertebrate. So they're the bugs, insects, crustaceans that live in the rocks and sediment at the bottom of the stream. And they're really important to the stream health, both for us being able to understand the stream health, and they're a great food source for fish and other animals. So they can be really impacted by salt, and they're quite sensitive. And the smaller organisms, plankton, microbes, can be even more sensitive to salt than fish and macroinvertebrates. If you're familiar with vernal pools, those are ephemeral bodies of water that pool after rainstorms, and it's a place where often frogs spawn, and that can be a place where chloride salt is concentrating in those pools. So that can impact those organisms that are spawning there. And then mammals drinking from high chloride streams can also be negatively affected. Think about it. If you go in the ocean, you get a mouthful of ocean water. That is not something you really want to be swallowing. It's not the same thing as drinking a fresh glass of water. So depending on how much salt is in a stream, that can be both unpleasant and unhealthy for the little mammals, you know, squirrels, raccoons, deer that are drinking from a stream. And then for us, there are drinking water impacts, and also, it's not mentioned here, but infrastructure impacts. You might have heard that there's, you know, chlorine goes into cleaning our drinking water before we drink it, but chlorine and chloride are not the same thing. And chlorides are really high cost for water treatment plants to remove, and it's not something that they've ever really had to invest in because fresh water is supposed to be fresh water. And I don't have it here, but there's a huge infrastructure cost just to road salt being on the road. It can corrode metal, it corrodes and rusts bridges, roads, all of the above. And applying less salt can help protect our infrastructure and our waterways. So this is something I just took from WSSC, which is Washington. I'm not sure, but they're the source of our water. If you live in the DC metro area, they deal with both providing drinking water and dealing with the sewage. So you can see since in the last 30 years how much salt has increased both in the Potomac River and in Patuxent Reservoir. So that's where the water comes from outside of Baltimore. So it's an issue in our area if you live in either of the major metro areas in Maryland. And then these are just some tips also from our friends at Wisconsin Saltwise. The thing that we like to focus on, because while there are alternatives or additives to salt, there is not really a silver bullet solution to an alternative to salt. The best option is really just for us to use it as efficiently as possible and not put any extra down, not over salt. So it's basically don't depend on salt to do all the work. And I really like this as a rule of thumb or a rule of mug, that if you have a coffee mug full of salt, that should be enough to treat a whole 20-foot driveway or 10 sidewalk squares. If you think about how much salt you sometimes see on the sidewalk, on the road, that is usually they're using a lot more. Salt is very powerful. It's really good at its job at melting snow and ice, and you don't need to use more than necessary. Also, I think Bronwyn said this at the beginning, but we can I'll answer questions at the end. We can do a Q&A then. I just can't really see them while I'm giving the presentation. So there are regulations around salt. They're a little dated. They just haven't been changed since the late 80s. There is a national drinking water standard for 250 parts per million chloride in water, and that's the threshold where water starts to taste salty. And then some states have standards that meet or go above the EPA standards for aquatic life. So what we do, how we measure is that 230 parts per million of chloride is considered a chronic exposure. We consider that high. If you're getting that for a week, a few weeks, that's a really bad sign. And over 860 parts per million is an acute exposure for aquatic life. So that just means that it can make it an unlivable environment for that time. So it could kill everything that's in there, or it could just make it so that those organisms need to go somewhere else for that time. And something we just like to talk about is that under the Clean Water Act, this is one of the things that you have the right to insist on a chloride standard that protects aquatic life. It's a very versatile and quite blanketing law, which is nice. So if you've ordered a kit, this is what you get in there. So it comes in a standard envelope. We try to really make it so that it doesn't look like junk mail, but it's an envelope and it has a corner sticker that says Saltwatch Kit inside, and this is what comes inside. In this little black baggie, we have 4 test strips that test for chloride between 30 and 600 parts per million. And then there are these 2 cards. One has the sample testing instructions. It tells you how you're going to collect your sample, how you're going to use the strip. And then on the other side, we have data uploading instructions, because you take the sample and then we also want you to report it to us. So that's on there too. They're pretty clear. If you are having issues, you can always email us. And then on the bottom right here, you see your conversion chart. It's really important that the strips in your kit match the conversion chart in your kit. They're not all the same, so you need to use the strips that come with your kit with that chart. That helps us read what your sample was. So we have people from all different arenas participating. School classes are doing this together. It's been really good during COVID this year, as sort of something that students can take home, or we could send directly to them for them to do on their own. University groups are doing it, watershed groups, people who are just concerned and saw a Facebook ad, they sometimes do this too. And then existing monitoring groups that we already work with also participate. And then when should you monitor? So before winter storm, it's a little late now, but we usually tell people our season kicks off around October, November. We say, get out now, get a baseline reading so you have something to compare it to. Or alternatively, you can see like, wait, why is my chloride so high? It hasn't snowed, no one's applied any salt in months. So then we wait until the winter, which is officially now, and you can go after salt has been applied to a road. And I know that there's been a lot of storms happening recently, and there's another one coming. So we say go out before the storm, and then go out after the first warm day or rainstorm following a snow or freeze. And then after the next rain event, or we tell people just blanket, go out in March or April when there are big rainstorms and more salt is being washed off the road that was applied earlier. This is where I'm going to ask Bronwyn, could you share that video I sent you?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so this video is actually made by one of our volunteers from a Michigan group we work with, Friends of the Rouge, and I just think she put a better video together than any of the ones we've had. So Brownwind share away.
All right, I gotta find it again here. Hold on 1 second, everybody. Okay, this should work now.
To test your stream for road salt using a very... Hello, I want to show you how to test your stream for road salt using a very simple test kit that was developed by the Izaak Walton League of America, the oldest conservation organization in this country. To do this test, it's very simple. You can request this test from the Izaak Walton League, and for free they will send you a packet with the test strips, a card for doing the reading, and then you will need to provide a small clean cup as well as some sort of device for taking a photo, preferably a smartphone where you can download the Water Reporter app, or you could also just use a camera or other device to take a photo of your results, or you could also just write down what you find out. Prior to getting the sample, you want to rinse your cup 3 times. One, 2, 3. Then you want to fill the cup to about 1 inch of water. The test strip is called a Quantab, and it's got 10 units on it, and it's orange, and you'll see an orange line at the top. That's the line that you're going to use to tell whether the test is done or not. All you're going to do is stick this into your cup. You want to make sure it's not submerged, and then you watch for that top line until it turns black or blue. And this may take as long as 10 minutes. See that the line at the top is completely black, so we know that the test has been completed. We can take it out of the water. And now we can read it. And to read it, I'm going to place it in the slot on the card that the Izaak Walton League provides. And to read this test, you want to look at the white that has climbed up the scale. And you can see that looks like about 7.1. If you look over to the side over here, you can convert that. That's 7.1 Quantab units. If you look on the chart, 7 or 7.0 is 0.08% sodium chloride, or 487 parts per million. Is that good or bad? Well, 5 Quantab units or more means that there is so much salt in this river that it is detrimental to the aquatic life in the stream. So this is not a good sign. I have the Water Reporter app on my cell phone here, and you want to submit a report, so you hit the blue circle with the pencil in it to submit. It's going to open up a map. You are going to need to have location okayed on your phone. You can drag it to make a little bit, make sure that's the right location, make sure that it's at the river that you're on. So I'm actually going to drag that. We're right about there. And then you want to scroll down to where you can put a note. In the note, it's very important to first hashtag it with Salt Watch, the name of this program. That's very important for it being mapped. So Salt Watch, you want to put the date. So today happens to be the 6th of January, 2021. And you also might want to put something about the location or weather. So I'm going to hit save there. And then I'm going to scroll down here to where we take the picture. This is a really important part. So I'm going to take a picture. I could also use a saved picture. But when you take the picture, you want to make sure that you do it vertical and that you get the entire card in the screen. So you want to go fairly close but have all of it in there. Take a picture. Then it'll ask you, is it okay? That looks good to me. I'm going to hit okay. You want to choose the Izaak Walton League as your group, so it'll show on their map. And then you hit submit. That's all you need to do to submit your results on road salt for your creek.
Thank you for playing that, Bronwyn. So that's just one of our volunteers. I think she runs through it really well. But again, if you have any issues with any of that, you can email us. I'm going to keep going with my presentation. So this is one of the cards you get when you get your kit, and it has all of those steps that she just took. Before you do any of that, though, you need to download Water Reporter to your smartphone and create an account and join the Izaak Walton League. If you don't have a smartphone, you can post your results on waterreporter.org. And if that's all too hard for you, again, you could just email us the results. But we want you to take your reading and then send it to us. Hold on, there we go. So this is what a good post looks like. This is what it looks like on the website. I can see everything. I can read the strip and read the card, and there's good notes here at the bottom. And you can see here what watershed you're in. And then we have the information to be able to get the location. This is a lovely collage of results we've gotten from all over. And then after you've taken your reading, what can you do next? If you find high levels of chloride, you should let somebody know. That might be your local watershed group to say, hey, you guys have more resources than me. Can you help me do something about this? You can call your city or your county Department of Environmental Protection to report high chloride levels, or if you see large salt piles or oversalting. In Maryland, if you do see large salt piles, like I said, MDE was our best bet for getting salt piles cleaned up. You can publicize the issue in your community, write a letter to the editor of your local newspaper. We have a sample letter on our website that you can adapt and use. And then we also have road salt best practices on our website that you can share with local property owners and community managers and state agencies. Folks in a shopping mall or at like a strip mall or in a homeowners association, there's a manager who has to contract somebody to apply that salt. So them knowing about this could make a big difference just in that one area. So this is our map from last year. You can see we use sort of a traffic light system for reading our results. Below 100 parts per million, we consider not worrisome because there are places where it's really high and it can be quite worrisome. Over 100, that's where we say this doesn't seem like it can be from background chloride that's just in the soil, so maybe we should start worrying about this. And then 230 parts per million is that chronic exposure toxicity limit. So over 230, we say you should really keep an eye on this because if this continues to happen, it can be dangerous for aquatic life. So this is our map from last year. We sent out over 1,000 kits. We got 770 reports. This year, these numbers are actually from like before all the storms last week. So, or was that 2 weeks ago? So both of these numbers are higher, but we've definitely sent out over 2,200 kits, probably 2,500 at this point. And I'm sure we've gotten over 900 reports so far. You can see last year we didn't have quite as much snow in our area. It wasn't quite as orange, and this year it really is. And then we're part of initiatives beyond Saltwatch because, beyond just the monitoring, because we want to close that circle, like I said, and we do that by partnering with groups outside. So I know this is the Natural History Society of Maryland, but if you happen to live or know anybody in Northern Virginia, Virginia DEQ just went through this whole salt management strategy process called SAMS, and they have put together all of these recommendations for how to reduce salt use in Northern Virginia to protect the Accoting Creek Reservoir. And we were part of that, but they have a really great toolkit of what communities can do both for education and outreach and what can be offered to applicators, etc. We've also partnered directly with watershed groups to pick up the project. So we've worked with some groups in Minnesota. They've actually made their own kits and they're raising community awareness. There's a group of watershed groups, that sounds funny, but in the Philadelphia area, Pennypack Trust being one, that are both raising community awareness and trying to use the results to work with local landowners on better salt practices. And this year we partnered with Minnesota Pollution Control Agency for us to collect chloride data through winter salt watch from areas outside of the Twin Cities for them to identify chloride hotspots. So that's the first instance where we really have a state agency who's interested in using our data, but maybe we can move beyond that. So we've got some results from different areas. So in the DMV area, this was before. Now we've had 2 big winter storm events, but this data is only after 1 big winter storm event. And unsurprisingly, we saw big spikes afterwards. Actually, I don't have it in here, but we just had a volunteer after the last storm. He had gotten high range chloride test strips, which go up to, I think, 5,000 or 6,000 parts per million. And he found, I think, over 3,000 parts per million on those strips. So really high chloride in the 4 Mile Run area in Northern Virginia. And there were also a few spots that when we told people to get baselines that were over 100 parts per million, which indicates that that chloride stuck around through the summer and is in the groundwater. So that's one of the issues. That's one of the reasons that this is such an issue. It's not just it gets in the water and then it eventually runs downstream to the ocean. We're fine. It's that it sticks around in the freshwater and it can get into the groundwater, which means it can stay in our freshwater system a lot longer, and it's a place where it's not naturally occurring. So this is our map. You can see a lot of green. That's from earlier in the season. I haven't updated it yet, but I know we've gotten a ton more reports from our area that's definitely red, over 230 parts per million. And then we have a new project. We're partnering with the city of Gaithersburg, and we're kind of testing what local methods can be used to reduce salt use. So we're connecting with homeowners associations, high school and middle school classes and local businesses to monitor chloride in Gaithersburg and in the streams in Gaithersburg to get them to monitor and to try to reduce their own salt use. So we're doing this, one, just to, we love a partnership on Salt Watch, but also so that what we learn in our community, because we are based in Gaithersburg, to learn what works there and what we can recommend to other communities who are interested in salt watch. And then just some results from other regions, because this is a national project. We've had great sustained cooperation in the Philadelphia area for 3 years, and they've gotten really great media coverage for our project. And then as far as data goes, they saw the same storm as us and predictably saw those spikes in chloride after the melting of snow. Here's their data. And not surprisingly, the further out you go, or there's less sort of roads, it looks greener. Closer to the more paved urban area, you get some higher chloride readings. In Minnesota, I mentioned we have this initiative with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and we have 2 watershed groups that make and distribute their own salt watch kits. And since December in the Twin Cities, we've regularly seen strips that are totally white, which means they're at least over 600 parts per million, which indicates there's a hazardous level of chloride in the water. And there it's a little different because there is obviously a lot of lakes in Minnesota. So that salt, it's not flowing somewhere, it's flowing and sort of stopping and settling in a lake. And that can mess up not just the aquatic life in a lake, but also the hydrology in a lake, because salt water is denser than fresh water. So you see this strip on the right, we get strips like that, readings like that all the time from Minnesota, which they're really far ahead in doing something about salt application in Minnesota, but it's because they've identified it as a problem for a while now. And then in Wisconsin, similarly, they know it's an issue. We've seen a lot of, we basically had no one doing salt watch there the previous year, but we've had a lot of people jump in this year. And there's a group around Madison called Wisconsin Saltwise, and we worked with them on developing handouts that we have on our website to neighbors and local property owners. And they're also interested in monitoring the lakes. But again, you can see kind of if you are not in so much of an urban area, you don't have as high a level of chloride so far. I need to double check after all the storms we've had. We don't have all of our data up to date, but we should by the end of this week. So I think salt watch is a success because it's a low cost to us. It's not a ton of skin off our back to send kits to people. And also, if there are groups that want a lot of kits, we can sort of provide them the blueprint to create their own custom kits. There's a low barrier to entry. There's equal interest from new and experienced monitors. I don't know who here might already be a water quality monitor. Chloride is not necessarily something you monitor with your regular water monitoring program. So we get interest from new and experienced monitors. We don't mind sharing this program. We're interested in the data, and we all love using Water Reporter as a platform. And it's something really easy for people to connect to before, maybe as a foot in the door or a foot in the water, for starting to care about clean water, because you can make that connection between the salt on the ground getting into our water and not being good, whereas some other pollutants in water might be a little harder to follow. But it's easy to see. You can see there's salt on the road. I saw them put it down yesterday. Hey, I see there's a high reading on this strip. So what you can do in your community, I mentioned some of these things, and this is a link at the bottom. I can put this in the chat too, of the what can you do. We have that section on our website. So keep monitoring and sharing your results. You got a kit with 4 strips, use up your whole kit. If you've used up your whole kit, we're happy to send you another. If you want to keep monitoring and share your results with us on Water Reporter, you should tell people in your community about smarter salt use, neighbors, local businesses. And something else that's really important is you shouldn't be fooled by eco or pet-friendly packaging. They're kind of allowed to write whatever they want, or there's no rules dictating what can be written on a bag. So sometimes people are like, well, this is magnesium or potassium chloride. It's still chloride, and depending on the temperature, sodium chloride is actually going to work better than both of those for salt, and it's not going to reduce how much chloride is getting into the water and impacting the environment. And last but not least, you should report oversalting in your community. I can't promise they're going to do anything about it, but because so many calls they get are often like, oh, you didn't put enough salt down. What are you doing? People complaining about that in the other direction. Balancing it out can make a difference and can make them start to reconsider how they want to deal with snow management. This is our What You Can Do page. We have some flyers to give out to people, and we have some letters that you can send. Either we have a letter to the editor for a local newspaper. We also have a specific Maryland focused advocacy letter that you can send to your state representative. Also feel free to modify it and share it with your local county government or city government, depending on where you live. And that's what I got. I think a lot of you have ordered Saltwatch kits, but if you haven't, www.saltwatch.org. I'm Emily Bialowas, and you can always reach me at saltwatch@iwla.org. That's where we answer every and all Saltwatch questions. So I'm gonna look at the chat for questions.
Yeah, there's a lot
And
of
then-
questions. Emily, why don't you unmute so we can come back? I mean, not unmute, unshare, and we can all come back together.
Sure.
There are quite
Okay,
a few good questions, including, and I'll let's see. So Lee wanted to know if there's limits on the different water bodies. So you said that they're testing in lakes and ponds in Minnesota and Wisconsin. Should we be doing that here, or is it Maryland? You're focusing on streams?
So we focus on streams in Maryland just because that is what there is for the most part. That's usually what people have access to. A lot of of our bodies of water that aren't flowing are often reservoirs, and you can usually catch a stream going into a reservoir or lake. So I think that's easier to access often anyway. So while we would be interested in the data in a lake, I think it's easier to monitor in a stream. Yeah.
Okay, and I just posted the link to the video down in the chat, so everybody should have it. People agreed that it was a fantastic tutorial there. And Rachel says, do you know the chloride level in saltwater bodies as a comparison?
So that can be like thousands, if not over 10, 20,000 parts per million. That really, it depends where you are. I'm not sure about seawater. Seawater is definitely in the tens of thousands parts per million of chloride. But it's not to say that we have the equivalent of a ocean in our stream. It's just that it accumulates over time, and there could be a point when it becomes, permanent. And it's not really reversible. We don't have a really easy way. I don't know that we have any way to reverse it. So what we have to do, what we can do, is stop it.
Right. And Nancy was interested, are the pre-treatment chemicals as dangerous as the salt, or is there a difference in them?
So the pre-treatment chemicals are actually our salt, and they're brine. So that's just, it's a liquid solution of salt in water. So that might not seem great, but we actually have learned that it is basically the most efficient way to apply salt, and it's better pre-treated, because what salt is really doing is it's creating a layer on the road level that that melts it at the road level as opposed to on top of the snow. So it makes it easier for snow and ice removal. It's not really supposed to be used on its own at all. So salt in solution as a barrier between road and snow or ice is where it's going to work best. Yeah.
Okay. And
so that, yeah.
And when you're taking the samples, does it matter the location in the stream, depth, center, side?
A little closer to where the water's actually flowing can be better. But you know, you don't have to do anything too dangerous. Yeah. I mean, with lakes, we say go a little further out and below the water surface, but because streams continue to flow, you should get a pretty good sense where the stream is flowing.
And I think you kind of touched on this, but does the salt settle in the soil, or does it dilute across the water?
So that's different in different systems. Some places it can get in the groundwater. Some places I don't know if I would say it settles in the soil, but we've hosted a few webinars, with Salt Watch as our theme, and we had one professor who studies trees and urban tree management in Minnesota, who talked about basically all of the diseases that can happen to trees and vegetation from salt exposure. So, that you can see really deformed trees on the side of the road just from salt spray. So, yeah.
And
I see one question.
Okay, go ahead.
I just saw one question that I can answer really quickly from Jean. All you have to do to order another set of strips is to go to saltwatch.org, and we'll send you another set of strips if you use them.
Also, we're halfway through the winters. Is it best to get 2 samples per different water bodies to get a good pulse on things?
I mean, you can. I think it's okay to do one and just go a couple times. I mean, last year, I don't know if we had any significant storm, so people weren't totally sure about when to monitor. But this year, I think if you go, there's supposed to be a storm soon. If you go before, you go after, you go later in the week after it warms up, hopefully, then you should be good.
All data is good. All data is useful, right?
Yes, yeah, we use all of the data. I mean, so we like to use the data for ourselves. That's how the data is being used at the moment, for us to get a good view of what's happening in different regions. And we've done some sort of like time series of looking, before and after storms in different places, what the readings are. But mainly we're doing this as a way for us to bring all this data together, and for volunteers to have the chance to monitor their streams for something. And then we do a little bit of peddling to people who can use data more. So I know Joel Moore is someone who gave a presentation for us, and he's a hydrogeologist out of Towson University, and he's doing some new project with students. And I said, well, you can use all of our data. And he said, we would love to. So that's something that, you know, we have offered students, and, you know, when there's a data set, people are interested.
So we have Cheryl was asking if there are alternatives to chloride for people to use, and if so, is it easy to access? And then Kathy says that on her farm, they use cracked corn on the walking surfaces, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, cracked corn. I've heard cracked corn, bird seed, also kitty litter are things you can use on sidewalks, on your pathways, that you can then, the nice things about things like that are that you can sweep them up and use them again. That's something else. If you're using salt, if it doesn't actually melt, you can sweep it up and use it again. Those are the best for, you know, sort of personal use. But as far as road use, there hasn't really been something better found than salt. I know there are places where, you know, they're interested in using what comes out of like beer production or beet juice or something. But in our area, you know, the Chesapeake Bay is really concerned with nutrient pollution. So neither of those would be really good for our watershed. So salt is kind of our best option. We just have to do our best to reduce it. And something I do want to plug, although it's not quite there yet in our area, is that states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, New Hampshire have winter maintenance certification programs where people who apply salt are trained in salt application, because that's not necessarily regulated at all. But that in those places, there's been a huge success where they've basically learned, it's voluntary, but it's a place where they've learned, hey, this actually has an impact on the water, and these are the ways we can use less salt and how much salt is actually needed. So I know that Maryland is doing a pilot with a program similar to that. And the focus is really on cost saving, because salt costs a ton of money, and it can be really damaging to infrastructure. So sort of the success stories in different places are that, hey, we applied less salt and we saved money and we got the same, you know, outcome of safety.
A couple of people wanted to know about sand versus salt for municipalities. And because Dawn says the Adirondacks uses sand.
Yeah, so sand also has issues in that it's a sediment, and a lot of new sediment introduced to a waterway can also be bad, not quite poisonous in the same way salt is. I don't know why sand is used some places and salt is used other places. I think salt is better. They do different things. Salt is gonna melt the snow and sand gives you grit. So in our region, people expect, you know, a bone dry, clear road. You couldn't get that with sand.
And similar, Kathy says that they've been using cinders on the road in Pennsylvania, in Lancaster County. Is that bad?
I don't know what that is.
Kathy, you want to elaborate on that? Oh, she might have left us.
Okay, that's something I can look into. I haven't.
Oh, it's like tiny coals, she says. It works great. But Janina says don't use non-lumping kitty litter because it's a huge mess.
I believe that.
Yeah, so sand gives traction.
So I do just want to point to, I also added a link in the chat to our What You Can Do page. That's just a good place to learn some good stuff that you can do just in, you know, in your neighborhood, and have some resources of what information you can share with other people. And yeah, we've got a lot of resources on our website, and we continue to sort of grow that library for folks.
You said that
And
some states had salt standards. Does Maryland have a salt fluoride standard?
I'm trying to think. I know Virginia does. If Maryland does, it's the same as the EPA standard. Most states, it's the same as the EPA standard. Yeah. So that would be 230 parts per million, which is the chronic level of toxicity, and then the acute level is 860 parts per million. Our strips only go to around 600, 610, but we say if the strip is totally white, that's probably a bad sign.
And Nancy wants to know what you're going to use the data. How are you going to use it? What you using it for?
So I think I answered this before, but we, in different areas, we use it for different things. Like I said, in Minnesota, the state agency there is actually interested in using the data for identifying hotspots. That's great for us. If that's something we're working on in different areas, I know we've talked to MDE about it, but I'm not entirely sure if that's something that they would be interested in using anytime soon. We're mostly interested because it's not something that is monitored on a national scale. It's something that's monitored sort of at a small community level, and we can sort of paint a picture of what the state of chloride is across the country. So we don't do any sort of analysis till the end of our season, which is in May. But we like to use it to get a view of what's happening all over. And it helps people recognize in their community, like, hey, this isn't a problem here, but someone else in my community who's just the stream over, they have found a problem. So the answer is we try to use it in different ways. And I mean, that's valuable to us. It's not necessarily going to be used for regulation, but it could be something that you could point to and say, hey, leaders of my community, there are all of these high chloride levels that this monitoring program found. Like, what are you going to do about it? So those are just some options.
And Kathy wants to purchase a whole bunch of strips.
Yeah, so we use the Hawk 30 to 600 parts per million bottle, and 40 strips come in a bottle. And you can just order it on Amazon. It's $40 or $50. I'm not sure. We order a whole lot of bottles, but if you want to order your own bottle, you can do that on Amazon or from the Hawk website. Yes, I can find that really quick. And then I do want to say that if you think it's like a major issue in your community, that we did have a volunteer get the high-end strips, and he found some high levels. Okay. I'm just getting that link. This is the
And how many,
Amazon link.
you know how many volunteers you have, or how many kits that get sent out every year in Maryland? Or?
In Maryland, so I had that this year. We sent, and it's probably higher after the last storm. So we've sent out over 200 kits. I'll say probably by the end of this week, we'll have sent out 300 kits. Just because there was such a increased interest after the recent snowstorm.
Well, I think you're going to have some other people here from here getting some kits and telling everybody to get some kits and out there tested. So that's a great thing. Any other questions for Emily about salt watching?
And if you do have any other questions, you can go on our website or email us at saltwatch@iwla.org. Happy to answer any questions there.
Great. I can't wait to see how the data progresses, and I hope that everybody here participates and encourages their neighbors and friends to participate as well, so we can get a better picture of our water quality in and around Maryland. I want to thank you for joining us for Community Science Saturday, and I hope to see you at one of our other presentations coming up, either on the Thursday evening or on our next Community Science Saturday, which will be the monarch butterflies, 5 different ways that you can collect data on monarchs. I agree. Thank you, Emily, for a wonderful presentation. I hope that everybody stays well and that we are able to gather together very soon. So take care, everybody. Thanks, Emily. I think she's frozen.
Bye.
Bye, Jean.